Here are some tips on how to know your audience. My name is Bruce Rule. I'm a writer and editor, and I work with a number of clients on basically anything they need to make themselves more effective communicators. So I edit social media, I write reports for them, I edit their speeches, I help them practice speeches, and I also coach public speaking and run public speaking workshops. I recently published a book called Heartfelt Goodbye, How to Write and Deliver the Eulogy Your Loved One Deserves. And last week's video, I talked a little bit about how a woman spoke very inappropriately at a Christmas event. She really spent about 10 minutes talking about taking care of her dying husband during COVID, and it basically brought down the whole table. And my advice last week was to know your audience, understand your audience so that you wouldn't make the same mistake, because you don't want to turn off your audience. And one of the viewers last week asked me for some tips on how to know your audience. And I wanted to divide this into both business and then in personal. In business, one of the ways you know your audience is to find out who's going to be in every meeting. And it's one thing, for instance, if you're just meeting with your regular team, a weekly meeting in which you know everybody, well, in that situation, you can be a little bit more free with the information that you're saying, in the sense that you don't have to go into quite as many details. You don't have to worry about explaining things as much as you would if it weren't your team. And it's also easier for you to know and gauge what the other people on the team are interested in, and who's going to be, for instance, the blowhard who might cut you off or whatever. So when you're having a meeting with people regularly that you know, you can help manage that meeting and know your audience by saying, okay, I know this guy's going to ask this question. I know this person's going to cut me off, so I need to make sure that the manager of the meeting makes it clear that I need to be able to speak, that everybody needs to be able to speak. That's one way to know your audience. Now, it's different when it's going to be a bigger meeting. And this is where you, as a speaker, if you know you're going to be speaking at a meeting, should contact the administrator of the meeting, the person that's setting it up, and just say, hey, I'm giving this talk next week to the meeting, and I just want to know what level people are going to be there so I can better prepare my presentation. Because if you're going to be talking to people at one level, say your colleagues, you're going to talk in a different way than if you're talking to the CEO, right? I would assume. CEOs are very busy. You got to catch their attention very quickly, right? But if it's the CFO who's going to be attending the meeting, well, you might want to make your presentation a little bit more about the finances and the specifics, because that's what the CFO would be interested in. Contacting the administrator ahead of time is a good way of finding out who the audience is. Also, you want to ask if there's going to be people from outside your unit or your company or the project, because then you're going to have to present your presentation differently. If there's going to be people that don't know anything about your project, you're going to have to give them a little bit more detail, perhaps a little bit more of an introduction to the project than you would if it's everybody on your team or everybody in the company that already knows the project. So that's a few ways in a business meeting for you to know your audience and help you prepare your presentations. Now, in the social sphere, in your personal life, a couple things you can do to know your audience is, one, accept that not everybody really cares about details of your life. Just accept that. So when you're in a social setting with people that you don't really know, you want to keep things lighter. You want to keep things more general. You don't want to go into very detailed histories of your health, for instance, or your past romantic relationships or anything like that. Keep things light, because these are people that don't know you very well. And so you don't want to be sharing a lot of really detailed personal stuff about yourself. If it's family, okay, then you talk a little bit more, perhaps, especially if it's people that really do want to hear what you've got to say. So you might want to present yourself differently with your family than you would with people that you aren't particularly familiar with. That's part of it. The other part, though, in the social sphere is what is the purpose of the meeting? In the case last week, this was a Christmas holiday dinner in which a bunch of people got together who really don't have much in common. We just belong to one of the organizations. So other than that organization, we don't have anything in common. We don't know anything about each other. We've never socialized. In a situation like that, you want to keep things light and very general because people don't really know each other. And if you go into something personal about like your father dying and all these details about his death, that's just not going to go over very well. People are going to tune you out, and people are going to want to stay away from you, to be honest with you. Same thing, for instance, if you go to a singles meetup, you're not going to want to talk about, all the problems of your ex-spouse or your money situation at a place where it's a bunch of singles who are looking to find another single who might be interested to talk to or hang out with. So you got to know your social event. Now, on the flip side, for instance, you go to a funeral and you're at lunch after the funeral. It's very appropriate then to talk about how much you're going to miss the person who died, or share histories about the person who died. It's very appropriate for it to be a little bit more somber if you want to talk a little bit about that, especially if you have family and close friends with you. So that's the type of thing when I say know your audience. Start to get a feel for that kind of stuff. And once you do that, you become a more effective communicator because people will be more open to hearing what you have to say because you're speaking in an appropriate manner, in an appropriate way, and that makes you more effective. What do you think? Do these tips make sense? Are these tips helpful? Please comment down below, especially if you've got other tips that you want to share. That would really be helpful. And like and share this video because I do think it's important for other people to understand that knowing your audience makes you a more effective communicator no matter what the situation is. Try to figure out who your audience is so that you can speak appropriately. Till next week, take care, happy holidays, and see you next week.